Hello, hello, welcome everyone. Welcome to day 57 of the Live 365 challenge, where I'm going to be going live every single day for an entire year. I made a commitment that I want to be having some more powerful conversations with people on the lives, and I'm really grateful to be joined by a good friend of mine, Ben Drummond-Fulcher, on today's episode of the Live. We're going to get into some really great topics. I apologize in advance if you can hear any background noise. For some reason, they're doing construction work at 10 p.m. here in Bali. You can't predict these things sometimes, but here we go. And we're going to get into some really good topics today. So if you have any questions, then please drop them in the chat. We would absolutely love to hear them. Me and Ben, we connected through the Jay Shetty coaching program, and since then Ben's been doing some amazing things, some amazing initiatives, so I'm excited to talk about all of that today. Takes a minute sometimes. Hey, how's it going, my man?
Good, how are you?
I'm really good. It's so good to see you again. It's so good to be back on a live with you after so long.
Yeah, I've been impressed with your lives daily. That's a lot of work to put into creating content.
Absolutely. I've really enjoyed it, to be honest. It's been a really good challenge for me. The consistency and the commitment that it's taken to show up for lives every single day. And I'm so grateful that you've joined me today, because I've been really just craving to have some really powerful conversations with other people that are in this space. And you in particular are so inspiring. You've got so many different initiatives that you're creating. I love all the stuff that you're putting out, the stuff that you're sharing. So first of all, thank you so much for joining me today, Ben. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's different being on the bottom side of the live instead of the top.
Right, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for those who are new to this, or who have just joined the live, Ben has positive talks on his page. I highly recommend you go and check those out. He does some really great episodes, and I was fortunate enough to be a guest on that way back in November, I think it was.
Yeah.
That was a really powerful conversation. So grateful to be back here again. So for anyone that's watching, Ben, maybe you could just give a short introduction as to what you do, and maybe in particular what you're doing currently.
Yeah, so I am a recent graduate from the Jay Shetty program, just like yourself, and I decided to take that as an initiative to start my own coaching community, as well as going full force into helping people in the leadership and professional realm. So I do community coaching as well as helping people in their professional fields. There's a lot of people out there that I think are tired of working for someone else, or tired of working in the corporate world, and want to put their skills to use in a better way. So I work with people to kind of develop what they need to develop to kind of go it on their own, because it is not always easy, because we usually work for other people, but we don't realize how many other people are working behind us to make us successful in a role in a corporate job. I know jumping into the entrepreneur seat is a little bit overwhelming for a lot of people, especially if they've never done it before. So I kind of help people along that journey. And then, like you said, I do the positive talks. I also started Coach Talks, which I bring different coaches from different backgrounds on to just have conversations, probably very similar to what we're going to have today. But yeah, that's about it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. And yeah, I really resonate with this struggle. And I've spoken to so many people who have told me that, they've wanted to create freedom for themselves, but it's such a challenge. And sometimes we don't even realize the minutiae of the challenges that come with stepping out and creating our own thing with being an entrepreneur. So I think the work that you're doing is so important, and there's such a demand for it at this moment. So that's awesome. And I'd love to know what inspired you to be a coach in the first place. I'm not sure if we ever talked about that, but I'd love to know what inspired you.
Yeah. So I think I've always found myself falling into roles of leadership or roles of helping people. Even I found when I joined new places, after a few days, I was already starting to help people who were behind me in joining. And I've just always found it to be very like heartfelt work to help other people through. And when it came to like my college experience, I went to school for architecture, but my passions fell into like the leadership stuff that I fell into. Like I was part of the honors program. I got to work with international students as well as being a freshman counselor, helping people become oriented to being a college student from living with their parents for the most part. And I kind of sat one day and I was just like, architecture is not for me. Maybe one day I'll build my own home, but the high stress and the dollar pushing you everywhere, it wasn't the creative outlet I thought I was getting myself into. And I was like, what was I passionate about? Like, what did I enjoy about school? What have I enjoyed about all the positions and things that I've done so far in life? And I realized that it was within that realm of coaching and helping other people. And I was like, okay, how do I make this a full-time thing? And luckily, I got into a position at a corporate company where they pushed me into leadership development. So I got to work in that realm. And that company sadly merged with another and dissolved my position. And I made the leap into entrepreneurship and doing it full time. And I've been on that journey ever since.
Wow. Oh, that's so awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And it's so cool as well that when you started in the realm of architecture and building things, and in a way you're still building something now, but you're just building it in a different way. So it's like you've found a different way to go down, a path with the same intention, which I think is really, really cool.
Yeah.
Um,
I have people laugh at me all the time because when I'm giving references to like life, a lot of times I will be like, first you have to lay the foundation. You can't just start with the roof. So I still use the terminology from architecture in my coaching. So it's funny how that happens.
I like that. Yeah, we all need a blueprint for our life sometimes, for sure.
Yeah.
So I'd love to talk more about the leadership side of things. First of all, one thing that comes to mind for me is, what do you think makes a really good leader?
I This has been a journey for me because I've had a lot of really bad leaders, and through life, I've just kind of used all of them as examples of, okay, what would make them a better leader in this situation. And I think for me, a leader is someone who is down in the dirt with everyone that they're leading. They're leading by example. They're not telling people what to do, but showing them what to do. They're compassionate and actually care about the people that are in their team, because I've luckily gotten to be in a part of a lot of different leadership teams. And the ones that I felt the most connected to were the ones where we showed up for each other. We knew the ins and outs of each other's lives, our day to day, because we cared about everyone's experience, not just what they could provide us to make money. So for me, it's all about kind of getting people to realize that the numbers that people push, yes, in the corporate world, those are important to like hit certain numbers. But if you're not making the connections, if you're not utilizing and getting to know the people on your team, you're probably hurting your numbers more than you think. Because a lot of times, the things I think a good leader can do can't be really measured by direct numbers, because being compassionate to an employee doesn't really translate into a number precisely, but it can be looked at as when you are compassionate, when you're empathetic, when you have a team that will come in on their days off because they are so connected and care about the project and the team, things get done. Whereas if you create a space where it's just like, do as I say, more of like that authoritative figure, uh, you get people who are like, it's my day off. I'm not coming in on my day off. I don't even want to be there on my days that I'm actually working. So leadership, I think, is so much more than what a lot of spaces provide. And one of the biggest things I've noticed, especially here in the United States, is leaders aren't really picked because they're leadership quality. They are picked because they've been in a position long enough. They might be really good at sales or something within that division. Maybe they were the only candidate that applied. there's a lot of things that put people in positions, and a lot of times I've seen people become very power hungry. Instead of thinking of the team, they're thinking how the team can serve them. I am just very passionate about making sure that the next generation of leaders coming up are people who understand the importance of leadership as a whole, not being someone who just tells people what to do.
That's so powerful. That's so powerful, and it's a shift that really, really needs to happen. Because I've personally experienced it as well, being in a workplace, and when there is like kind of this authority looming down on you with this old paradigm of pressure and force and hyper analysis on everything that you're doing, it's not conducive to creativity and openness and flow, which is, I think, what it seems to be shifting more to these days. Have you kind of experienced that? Are you seeing that shift happening in these kind of spaces?
I'm definitely seeing, as we start getting the younger people stepping into leadership roles, a lot more of a carefree work environment where I think a lot of people are starting to realize that for teams to function, there has to be connectiveness between each other. Um, you said creative, and I think that that's one thing that most corporate companies weed out too soon, because creatives are people who come into a space and see so much room for improvement. They see things that can be done differently and maybe more efficiently. But in a lot of spaces, they've got like this groove of how things are done. And creatives aren't usually respected at lower levels within companies because they just want you to do as they say. They're like, here's the
Mhm.
road. I just want you to walk on it. Stop trying to find quicker ways. Just walk on the road. This is how it's been done. And creatives are like, but I can see a shortcut. I can see this. And a lot of times creatives aren't respected to where they'll either leave or they'll be let go. But then when companies get to a place where they come across a problem where this road that they've been building for so long no longer works, now they only have people who follow a leader that's just like, do as I say, and they have no creative genes left in the company. So when an obstacle comes, a lot of times companies struggle overcoming those types of things because they don't have a creative space where people felt like they could share their ideas.
Mm. I feel you. I feel you. And it's like you said, it's one of those things that's kind of, it's hard to measure. Like being a good leader with the example that you used. And it's the same with creativity. It's really hard to measure how kind of someone's creativity has contributed to something, but it's so, so important to have the creativity as well as the analytical minds creating this. Yeah, that's really, really awesome. And I had a question as well. What do you, I went, okay, no, that question's left me. I guess, um, so, okay, yeah, this is a question I had. One of the things that when people are stepping into leadership roles, particularly you said young people that are coming up into this, sometimes people deal with imposter syndrome or like a lack of self-worth in that position because they don't feel worthy of it. Even if they might be really well equipped, they might be a really, really great leader. Sometimes that self-worth and that limiting belief about themselves holds them back. So what do you recommend for somebody who is dealing with that, like imposter syndrome and self-doubt?
I think the important thing is to connect to yourself as to why you want to be a leader, because I think the road laid before us by people of the older generations, they've laid a very rigid map of this is how things have to be done. And I think as leaders are coming into the world, they're starting to see that the way things have been done for generations are not the way that we have to do it now. And it's connecting back with yourself and remembering, like, and I tell coaches this all the time, to remember why you wanted to become a coach, remember why you wanted to become a leader, because there's going to be a lot of naysayers. There's going to be a lot of people who say this is how things have always been done, this is how you have to do it. um, I think leaders know that you're going to step outside of the lines and you're going to create space for others to do the same. I think in the most ideal leadership role, leaders lean on their teams as much as the team leans on their leaders. So in moments where imposter syndrome pops up, don't be the type of leader that tries to hide that, because that's where the do as I say starts happening, because you're afraid people will see that imposter syndrome you're feeling. Whereas if you step fully into it and just say, hey, team, like, I'm not really sure what direction we're supposed to be taking today. Like, I'm stumped. Let's sit here and brainstorm some ideas, and realize that you're usually on a team full of adults. Not very many leaders are in positions where they're working with children. But in instances, I mean, even children have great ideas. But in the like scheme of leadership, you have to remember that you're not meant to have all the answers, and that's okay. Use your team. Like, a team appreciates a leader who is honest and upfront about their shortcomings than having a leader pretend they're perfect and lead them into a position of hostility and problems that could have been avoided if they were just open about, hey, I'm not sure what to do here. Let's figure it out as a team.
I love what I'm hearing there is vulnerability that's important. And
Yeah.
sometimes being a leader, having that vulnerability actually creates more trust. And suddenly you can open up and find solutions to problems that you otherwise wouldn't have because you've been vulnerable about the fact that there is a problem there in the first place. And that's so interesting. I remember hearing once how sometimes people in leadership positions actually retain information because they're worried that if they give that information to the people below them, they won't have the kind of authority and a higher position, but how that's actually blocking things because sometimes the people that are working underneath them actually need to know that information, and how I guess we're kind of flipping the paradigm, and it's all a working together kind of thing. And I think that vulnerability is such a powerful trait to be able to cultivate in that, especially when we are leading by example, like you said. We want to be the change that we want to see in the people that we're leading and working with. So that vulnerability, it gives others permission to do the same as well. And that's where, as a group, and in all situations of groups of humans, that vulnerability connects us. As soon as somebody is vulnerable with you, it creates a level of trust and connection that otherwise wouldn't be there, that I think is so important in these spaces for any kind of communal group to thrive, but especially in workplace situations. So that's really awesome. I also had this kind of an idea that I'd love to know your thoughts on, where they say that good leaders create more good leaders. And I've heard some people have like counter arguments to that, but I'd love to know what your thoughts are on that idea.
Yeah. So within the company that I worked for a little bit, my leader that I started off with was a leader that created leaders. Like, she took everything in her power to give me everything that I could have to excel. And in the end, I jumped several positions up. I was no longer at the very bottom level. I was right under the VP in the company. And uh, when her and I actually connected, she's like, I'm going to have to stop training leaders because they keep coming in and stealing all of them. And I have to retrain new people. And I was just like, no, like, that's phenomenal that you can be seen as someone who is not trying to limit people to hold them in place so that your job is easier. You're looking to empower people and see their level of skill sets and make sure that they get into the right place. Because I started in sales, and I was good at sales just because I'm a people person, but that's not where my like strengths lie. And when I got promoted into corporate trainer and I got to train people, I was so much more effective for the whole team, because now I was giving that wisdom to everyone else in sales to where they could be better salespeople. And I could sit in my power in a coaching position and work with people because I have the empathy, I have the patience, I have the ability to have an open mind and see things from many perspectives. Whereas other trainers are like, this is the way things are done, this is how you have to do it. And I was just like, no, lean into your strength. If you're a
Mm.
people person, lean into that. Some people are more facts, they're all about tech and all of that. If you have to lean into that, go for it. But the fun thing I've learned is building the community that I've been building for coaches. I stepped into a leadership role And I was like, I want to build a community. I have an idea of what I want it to be. But as it's continuing to grow, I'm constantly seeking feedback from people and I'm hearing, I need this, we need this, how about this? And I'm like, well, that wasn't on my books, but let's write it down because obviously this team I'm supporting want this. So it's growing me as a leader because I'm keeping my ears open. But my ultimate goal is for the people within the community to start stepping up into positions where they want to lead things. They want to have the conversations and start them, and it's not just on my shoulders. So for me personally, I think a leader that creates leaders, I mean, we're passing the torch, and just by giving someone else the torch to be a leader doesn't mean that I'm any less of a leader. There are
Mm.
plenty of people to serve. This person may rise above me and serve another audience, or they may become a leader that one day serves me. And if I'm holding that back from them, I'm doing my own self a disjustice because or an injustice because these people are going to be able to teach me something later in life. You never know, but you never want to hold people back because of an insecurity of your own.
Yeah, 100%. When others win, we're winning as well, especially in leadership. And I see a great opportunity to segue there into a question I had about leaning into strengths, which you mentioned there, because sometimes we have strengths that we might sort of be aware of, or we might not even be aware of at all, that if we were to lean into them, we would really truly unlock our full potential. But sometimes we don't necessarily, we never discover that strength, or if we do it, we don't lean into that as much. Maybe our role isn't in that and we carry on doing something else anyway. What do you recommend, I guess, first of all, for people to actually acknowledge and discover what their own strengths really are?
I think it's really hard to do that. I think that's why a lot of people work with coaches and other people because the world doesn't really promote that. The world promotes this cookie cutter way of doing things. And I say, as soon as you feel that resistance, learn to like pay attention to that, learn to uncover it and like dissect it and understand it. Because one thing I've learned as a coach when I'm working with people is when I ask them what their passions are, what their areas of expertise are, a lot of them don't know because they're told this is what you have to be. And they just try to smush themselves into that cookie cutter idea of what they're supposed to be, and they lose all sense of like identity in that. Their uniqueness starts to fade because they're not connecting to it anymore. So I think doing things where you can reconnect to that is really important, whether it's a retreat, whether it's working with a coach, whether it's just taking some time off from the areas that are really stripping you of your identity. But I think leaning into your uniqueness, which is usually the things that people make fun of us for, or tell us that you'll never get somewhere with that, or doing this is not going to get you the results you want. Usually that's the type of thing you have to pay attention to. I luckily had a coach where she saw me trying to push myself into a cookie cutter. And she was just like, why are you trying to be like the other people? She's like, you have amazing skill sets that other people don't have. And you're trying to do it their way and you're stressing yourself out. Whereas you could solely be putting in all the energy and effort into your strengths and succeeding in that way to where one day people are going to look at you as a method of success. And I was just like, oh, and it's so obvious once someone points it out, but until someone points it out and helps you see that the things that you're trying to like cover up or detach from are your strengths, that's when you start to realize, oh, my uniqueness is my superpower. Like I need to stop trying to avoid standing in that power and trying to stand in someone else's version of power.
Absolutely, yeah. And we really need to lean into that uniqueness, and sometimes it really does require somebody else to be able to reflect that back to us. Because I've experienced that before. Somebody be like, "Oh, then they'll say I'm a certain skill that I have, or they'll notice something about me that I didn't even notice before, and I'll be like, oh, and it kind of clicks. And I think that's again why working with coaches, working with mentors is so powerful, because they can reflect things to you, maybe even by asking questions or making observations that we never have made about ourselves. And once we realize those, as you said, we can slip into those and lean on those strengths. And sometimes we realize that we had abilities and potential that we didn't even know were there, because we were trying to fit, as you said, trying to fit into this mold of what other people thought we should do. And couldn't possibly imagine how many people out there are not experiencing and living their full potential because they're trying to be someone else, or they're living a version of themselves that somebody else has expected them or told them to be. And I think that once those people start waking up to their full potential by realizing the true strength that they have, we're going to start seeing, an uprising in people really elevating their own personal development, which is, going to be an exciting time. And I think this is why it's so important that you're here, doing this, helping people discover these things. And, I personally have experienced the massive benefits of that through coaching. You have that accountability, you have somebody asking you questions, you're showing up for yourself. And yeah, it's really, really powerful work. I'd be really curious to know, in your experience in this world of professional development and coaching, what is the thing that holds people back the most from their own development, I guess?
I think putting yourself in a position where you think you know why you're successful holds you back, because in a position where we, because kind of like what you were saying just now, we live with ourselves 100% of the time. So we don't know how other people do things. So we don't know certain skills that we've obtained and certain ways we do things that connect well with people around us. Sometimes it takes someone from a different area to come in and observe us, to be like, you know what? The reason you're so successful is because you have a real connection with every single person you interact with. Like, for you, that's normal. That's like, oh, that's not something that everyone does. And there's so many things that we can attribute to other people, like gurus coming into our life. I always tell people that there's a lot of things that I've gained from my grandfather's guidance that I just thought everyone had access to. That as I've gone out into the world, I've realized not everyone has that. I used to think everyone was an empathetic person. I thought everyone felt the way I did. I thought everyone could sense when someone was uncomfortable in a position. And when I started realizing that those were things that were unique to me and a few other people in the world, I was like, oh, so that's an area that I need to lean into. That's an area that I can teach other people how to be more empathetic, or more understanding, or more open minded. And I think it's really important for us to constantly put ourselves in positions and spaces that grow us, but also give us a mirror to look back at ourselves and realize what we're giving to the world. Because I've been on a lot of leadership calls where people are like, tell us why you're successful. And people will blurt out these random things. Oh, well, I say this every time. But then you go and see them in action, and you're just like, wow, they make genuine connections. They are sitting there and giving the best possible solution to these people because they care about them. That's what's different than these people over here who are just trying to push as much product on someone as possible. And I think that it's important for people to put themselves in positions where they can see their success while also learning from other people's success. Don't ever assume that because you're super successful that there's no way for you to grow and improve more. I've always found, because I've worked for so many different companies now, I just take little pieces of every single one, because overall I was just like, they're great, but this was what made them great. Take this, put it in my toolkit, and just continuing growing myself. So, like, when people start to feel like there's no more area to grow, that's when I suggest finding a new space to be in, to feel small and feel like you're overwhelmed by this nuance of something, so that you can see it from a perspective of being new and grow in that perspective. Because experts a lot of times become experts and then forget what it's like to be new at something. And when new
Mm,
people come to them and them being the expert, they don't create a relationship with new people that inspire new people to grow. They create relationships where it's kind of like, I'm better than you, and I have so much to give you. Whereas I've started to develop a relationship where it's like, I'm here as an expert in this realm for you, but I'm sure your area of expertise will teach me something along this journey as well.
mm, mm. Amazing, amazing. And I think what you said about when we feel like there's a time where we're not necessarily growing, we can create a new space for ourselves. I think that's so, so important. And this links to something that we spoke about. Well, I said that recently I've been kind of feeling maybe like not super motivated, or maybe like not the same level of productivity as before. And even since we spoke about that over messages, I kind of realized that that wasn't necessarily me feeling unmotivated. I think that was actually just me having like an accumulation of energy period. Because now coming out of it, I'm kind of feeling more inspired and more motivated again. But at the time, I was like, why am I so unmotivated? Why am I so unproductive right now? When actually what I needed was just some time to rest and recuperate, to get that energy and get that spark back. And I think that in this, the realm where we're growing and developing, I think that it's so important as well sometimes to take time to actually just pause and be like, okay, I'm just, I've grown so much right now. Let me just integrate this. Let me sit with what I've experienced, where I've come from, and where I am now, and know that once I've done that, I'm going to be ready to go again. I'm going to be ready to grow again. But sometimes, we're just constantly trying to like go up the mountain consistently, keep going, keep going, keep going. And sometimes we kind of wear ourselves out. But I think those moments of pause are as important as the growth itself. It's almost like the growth that we can experience is kind of correlated with the amount of time that we've taken to fill our cups back up. And I saw this post earlier that I shared on my story, which is that hustle culture thinks that resting is like it's unproductive, but it's actually filling up the tank. It's giving us the energy that we need to keep growing. So I think that's so powerful. And just knowing that sometimes that's why we can feel unmotivated. Maybe it's because we've been working so hard. But what is your experience with that? And do you have any recommendations for people that are going through that same kind of experience?
Yeah, I think the community that I've seen the uninspired like exists really strong is like the creative people. And I think sometimes when we focus so hard on creating, we forget what inspires the creativeness in us, and its experiences in life.
Mm,
So I think that sometimes when you're so focused on the task at hand, you forget what fuels that task. So kind of like what you were talking about with the thing you posted, whereas like people think that it's putting on the brakes as resting, when actually rest is the refuel it's required. It's not you slamming on the brakes, it's you resting and filling the tank so you can continue forward. And I think that a lot of times we forget what inspires us. I know that for me, my journey as a coach, what inspired me at first was just my own personal journey and knowing that there was something better out there for me than the life that I was currently living. So my story inspired others. And then when I started going into full success mode where I was achieving a lot of things, one of the things that I noticed was I was starting to feel uninspired, because now I wasn't talking from a place of I was struggling and here's what I did to overcome it. I was now in a new phase where I was like, I am now in success, and I didn't know how to communicate that. And then it became a story of connecting with that version of myself, that authentic version, and learning what lessons I was learning on that path and sharing that with the world, because I was no longer in the phase of struggling and being disconnected from myself to where I was authentically connected to that story. I was now in a position where I am experiencing success and I was disconnected from myself again because I was trying to stay connected to my past self. So it was about reconnecting with myself at my current state and being re-inspired to tell that version of my story. And I think that for me, it's just realizing when to let go, when to rest, reconnecting with ourselves. Because a lot of times, coaches, experts, we get so tied into helping other people that we forget that we're always on a journey and we always have to reconnect with that. So, anytime that I started feeling that burnout or feeling uninspired or disconnected, I was like, okay, this is the time to like stop, refuel myself, reconnect with myself to figure out what I want to be doing now, and don't get stuck in that corporate mindset of you have to climb the ladder, because sometimes we climb a mountain and realize that we want to go a different direction. We saw a mountain over here, we wanted it when we were down in the valley, but now that we're on the second mountain, we see something else that we want to go to. It's okay to pivot, like, and change direction. And I think that that corporate mindset is so like jammed into our minds that that's the only way to be. So we start to make that journey even as entrepreneurs and people who aren't in that realm anymore, and we start to feel uninspired because we're refusing to allow ourselves to connect to what would be meaningful to us right now on our journeys.
Yeah, I really resonate with that. I've kind of experienced so much of what you're talking about, actually. And one aspect of that is kind of when we're going on these paths, it's we can sometimes stray away from what, as like you said, what inspires us, what motivated us in the first place. And I've definitely experienced that, you know, for full vulnerability with social media, with this whole coaching business. You hear so many different voices telling you, oh, this is what you should do to make sales. This is what you can do to increase your followers. This is what you can do to hook people into your videos. And you hear all of this stuff. And at some point you think, oh, am I supposed to be doing that as well? And then you kind of go off in this tangent. And then you comes to a point where, as you said, you feel uninspired and you feel unmotivated. And you're like, why am I feeling like this? And I've realized that it's because I'm not in alignment with that path. It's almost like my intuition, my high guidance is telling me, this is not you. Return to your intention. Connect back with yourself, with your truth, why you're doing this in the first place, which is ultimately to help people. And I think that this is a reminder I just want to shout from the rooftops to everyone in this kind of space. It's just like, tune out from all of those other voices that are telling you what to do and listen to the inner guidance that's got you to start this journey in the first place. I think that voice has so much wisdom for us, but sometimes we get so, you know, drawn away by all of these other ideas and these other notions that people are sharing that we forget what we truly, you know, why we truly started in the first place. And the second point that made me think with what you said is I've been experimenting recently with actually just taking time to just not work. Like when I'm not feeling inspired, to be like, all right, I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to go and have some nice food. I'm going to go for a haircut. Just do something that I enjoy and not feeling guilty and feeling like that's unproductive. And it's just had this kind of inverse effect where when I've done those things that are restful and that the hustle culture would say are counterproductive, when I return to the work that I'm doing, I'm so much more focused. I'm so much more present. I'm so much more inspired and motivated to do it because I've refilled my tank. I've refilled my energy. And it's not always about just working. And sometimes there are times where we need to push through, but it's not always the case. And there is so much value in enjoying life. That's what we're doing this for, right? That's why we do everything, is to be able to enjoy our lives more. But sometimes we get, again, caught up on a different path where we've said that we're going to work so that we can enjoy life. And then we end up going so far down the work path that we forget to enjoy life. And it's just about coming back to the intention that you've set for yourself of what you want to experience from life and why. And I think the more that we can live in alignment with that, the more fulfillment, the more joyful we're going to feel, the more creativity and energy we have. And I think that's something that needs to be spoken about more, to be honest.
Yeah, it's funny because I recently just like completely cut ties with any type of corporate job whatsoever and fully focusing on myself. And one of the things I was doing was like, okay, I need to set a schedule that will keep me productive. And I was like, okay, what does my 40-hour work week look like? And while I was going through it and trying to put stuff in to fill the 40 hours, I was like, why is it 40 hours? Like, why is that the time that I decided? And I was like, I'm stressing myself out trying to make 40 hours a work week for myself. And I was like, why does it have to be 40? Like, I am trying to get away from that corporate mindset of being in that structure that did not serve me well, left me exhausted to the point where I was absorbing caffeine to survive the hours that I needed to survive through and be productive. And I cut out caffeine and I was just like, I want to allow my body to wake up when my body wakes up, go to sleep when I want to sleep, be productive when it wants to be productive. And yes, when I have goals, sometimes you have to push through feeling sleepy or not wanting to do something. But you have to be really intentional and careful because we're taught to think very certain ways when it comes to work. Like so many people say, "Oh, I put in so much hard work." And I'm like, "Is it hard?" Like I like the idea of saying like I put a lot of passion into my work this week. Like that feels so much better. Like even saying it like makes my hair stand up because every single time people would talk to me, I'm like, oh, it was a hard week this week. And I'm like, why am I saying that? Like, I want to be in a position where it's like my work brings me to life. I was talking to my partner about this, and I was just like, it's very different what I'm doing versus what people have to do at a 9 to 5 job. And the goals and things that you have to do are laid out for you, whereas I get to be creative and choose how mine works. Yes, I need to pick and choose to where it results in me making an income that I can live off of, but I'm not willing to sacrifice my peace for like a larger income. I don't think it's worth it. I would rather be more creative and believe in myself in finding ways to survive and live happily than stress myself out to have an income that leaves me feeling secure in that space, because I don't think you have to sacrifice your peace to find an income that can support you. But sometimes you have to make sacrifices to have that peace. And sometimes that means letting go of some of the pleasures that you pay for regularly for a bit to where you find that balance of living in harmony with yourself and then also living and working in a way that serves you and the people that you're connected with. And it's just like a journey of trying to find that balance. And I'm in that position where it's like weeding out those thoughts of this is how it has to be done and figuring out, okay, why am I stressing myself out? I'm more stressed today than I was when I was working for that job. That's not what I left that job to do. So let's figure that out and fix it.
Absolutely. I massively resonate with that. And I love what you said because I've gone through the same thing, like planning out my 40-hour work week and then just asking the question, like, why does it have to be 40 hours? And, you know, one of the things that Jay Shetty talks about is it's not just about the time that you put into something, but the energy that you're putting into something. And if you're spread thin over 40 hours because you think that that's something you should do based on what the corporate world says, you might not be able to give those 40 hours your full energy. Whereas if you were to work less hours and really focus and put your energy and your passion towards it, you might be way more creative and way more productive. And I think that this idea of peace that you spoke about is so important as well. And I think harmony as well. You know, people talk about work-life balance, and I really like the idea of work-life harmony, where everything is in unison and we have a feeling of inner peace. And people might, you know, not necessarily correlate productivity, creativity, success with inner peace, but I actually see a really strong correlation there. I think that the more that we can create a level of peace within ourselves, the more that we can be fully aligned with what we want to do and how we want to do it. And we might see solutions to problems that we otherwise didn't see. We might have ideas that we otherwise wouldn't have had if we were in a stressed out situation from working for too long. Sometimes that inner peace is actually what it's all about. And it's not that we are working so many hours in order to find the inner peace. It's almost like we can use that inner peace and feel that inner peace and allow that to actually be the anchor that we create everything else from. I think that's kind of the more holistic direction that at least I'm taking my life in, and it sounds like you're maybe doing the same.
Yeah, it's interesting because the other day I walked over to the grocery store to get my lunch, and I was walking back to my apartment, and I ran into someone who was homeless, and he approached me in a very different way than I've ever been approached by someone who was homeless. He came up to me and he was just like, "You have an energy that's different than anyone I've ever seen before. I would like to ask you a couple questions. Would that be okay?" And I was just like, okay, yeah, sure. Like, I'm sitting there with like sushi in my bag, so I didn't want it to go bad. But I was like, at the same time, I was just like, this is interesting. And one thing that kind of flew through my mind was like the live where you were kind of walking through and finding meaning in everything. Like you were talking about like, oh, what can I learn from the trees? What can I learn from the grass, the sky? Like, and I think that it's cool to walk through life and be like, what can I learn from other people? And it kind of like fueled a new thought in me because he was sitting there talking to me and praising like an energy that I was giving off. And I was having a conversation with him, and I was just like, I don't think you realize the strength that you hold within yourself, because I don't know very many people who have an apartment, who live in a home, who have money to support themselves, who could survive weeks and weeks and weeks living outside and trying to find food and connect. And I was like, and the more I talked to him, I learned that a goal in his life is he wants to visit Egypt eventually. He would love to be a truck driver because he's never left the city and wants to see further than the city limits of Richmond. And I started talking to him and I was like, well, what's stopping you from that? And to hear his limitations and beliefs, like he was talking about living in an area where no one had the belief that that was a possibility. Everyone shared their limitations and limiting beliefs with him. He had a negative experience with an absent father, a mother who was abusing substances, and his mindset was so closed. And I was just like, well, I want to take a moment to sit with you and talk about some things that we can do to open your mind a little bit more. And as we were talking, he was starting to realize that he already was doing some things that were really phenomenal for him, like helping others who, like he was talking about an elderly homeless woman that he connected with, who he's supported. And when he gets money or food from people, he shares with her. And I was like, that's compassion, that there's people in the world that lack that. You have that. And I was like, I want you to also remember that compassion needs to be reflected to yourself. But it was very interesting to be kind of just taken off of that regular track I was on, which was go grab my food and come back and work on my computer while I eat. And I just kind of sat there. It ended up being like a 2 hour conversation.
Wow.
And I actually came back up because I don't carry cash or anything like that on me. And I grabbed my dog and I was like, we're going for a walk. And then I walked back over to him and I saw him already kind of like sharing what he had been given from someone else to another homeless guy. And I just walked up to him and I was like, here, I would love for you to have that. And if you need a like motel room, grab that. And he just granted me a perspective that as I was finishing my walk with the dog, as I came back up and was working on things, my mind was now circulating around this new experience that gave me a perspective that I hadn't had before. Because most of the time it's hard to have long conversations with people. But he had nothing but time, and I just opened my schedule to be able to move it how I needed it to be moved. And I was like, wow, this beautiful connection. How was the sushi? The sushi was still fine. But yeah, I was given a perspective that I had never thought of before, and he just kind of opened my mind to there's a lot more people out there to serve, and my greatest abilities come to the surface when I'm in a place of service. So I was just like, okay, one thing I want to do with my free time that I have during my work week is find ways to serve people who wouldn't be able to afford it, but do deserve
Mm,
the help that's required to get them out of their current circumstances.
mm,
And so that's been something that's now on my plate of I get to control my schedule. I want to put something like that in it because I know that that will serve a lot of people with zero expectations of that coming back to me. But what it brought to the surface was something really special to me. And I want to make sure that that continues to exist in myself because that only will continue to inspire me in other areas of my life as well.
mm, mm. That's such a powerful story, Ben. Thank you so much for sharing that. And that just goes to show as well that sometimes life does not go as we expect. You went out there expecting to get some food and come home, and that was it. And then you had this complete new tangent that's completely shifted your experience. And linking back to what we spoke about before, sometimes we might be working away, and we think, oh, I want to go out, I want to go for a walk, I want to go get some food. We're like, no, I've got to work. Maybe we order the food in, and in that, we may never have that experience that we were going to have because we weren't listening to the part of us that knows what we really need. So so many lessons from what you just shared. That's really powerful. And for anyone that's listening, you can go back and rewatch this live on my profile afterwards. So if there's any bits that you missed, then you can go check those out because this has been such a powerful session, Ben. It's been so great hearing all of your perspectives, hearing your stories, your generosity, your energy. I just want to say thank you so much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I would love to do this again sometime.
Most definitely. And thank you so much for having me on. I try to tune in to as many of the lives that you do as possible just because you have a lot of inspiring thoughts and conversations on your lives as well. So I will definitely come back on anytime you invite me and just keep doing what you're doing. And I try to throw out as many little conversation pieces while I'm watching the lives if I can't join, just to kind of spark a thought because I know that you're the type of person that you can be thrown anything and you will put out a piece of wisdom that people may need to hear. So I fully support what you're doing and I'm looking forward to seeing what else comes from the lives that you're doing this year.
Thank you so much, Ben. I really appreciate it. And I do really massively appreciate all your contributions on the lives as well. I wanted to just ask for anyone that's listening, what is coming through from your heart that you would just like to share with everyone? If there's something that you feel you would like to share.
I think being present is the most important thing. And I think so often we create goals and put happiness and peace and everything else at the goalpost instead of realizing that all of those things serve us in the present. They're not things that you should be putting off for the future. So be present, be aware of the people around you, and look for ways to be of service, whether it's grabbing something from the top shelf for someone who isn't tall enough to grab it, or if it's helping people in other ways or just reaching out. I am a huge supporter of just reaching out to people and just asking how they are because sometimes we're all so focused in our own personal life that we forget that the world is going on around us as well. So just take time to reach out and just share a positive comment. It's not always about getting people to come pay you or do something for you. Sometimes it's just using your free time to go spread something positive in the world. There have been days when I'm just like, you know what, I'm feeling kind of down. I'm going to go post 20 positive comments on the next couple of Instagram things I scroll by. and then seeing the responses back just inspire me to feel better. Um, so sometimes it's just as easy as taking your free time to just not put more judgment into the world, but more like cheering for people and what they're doing. Sometimes all you have to do is like say, "I see you," like you're seen. Um, and find as many ways to connect with people as possible. Don't do the self checkout. Check out with the grocery store clerk and let them know that they're seen. Thank them. Wish them a good day. Do it to people around you. Say thank you. Any way that you can stay present and connected to people, I think will serve you in the long run because we're for connection. And I think we're living in a world that has provided us so many ways to disconnect. Use time to connect with people because that's what your mind and energy wants from you. And you'll see amazing results when you start to do that.
That is such a beautiful message. Thank you so, so much for sharing that, Ben. And just if is there any offerings that you have currently that people can connect with or engage with on your part?
Yeah, I mean, right now, I'm building the community for coaches. So, for coaches that are looking to continue that community connection, I'm pulling people from all walks of my life, not just the Jay Shetty certification program. So, I'm offering that community for free right now for all the coaches that want to be a part of it. And then for people who want to connect with me, feel free to send me messages on Instagram. If there's ways that I can serve you for free, I will do my best. If there's ways that I can serve you as a coach, I will do my best as well. But for me, it's all about professional development, leadership, community. Those are my areas of passion. Being a part of the LGBT community, I'm a huge advocate for community within that space as well. So diversity and inclusion is huge for me, very important in my leadership that I try to teach people. But yeah, reach out to me and I would love to try to work with anyone who is willing.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I just want to say thank you so much for joining me, Ben. It's been absolutely amazing as always, and I know that everyone listening has taken a lot of value from it as well. So thank you so much again. I'm really, really, really grateful, and thank you everyone for tuning in to this amazing live. I really hope you took some insight from it. Thank you so much again, Ben, and I'll speak to you soon.
Yep. Have a good one.
You too. See you soon, guys. Take
Bye.
care.